everybody, and welcome back to the Only Hoops podcast. This is your host, Jeff Bell, and I just want to thank you guys for tuning back into the podcast. We have a really good episode for you guys today. So this is the second episode of the podcast and the first episode with a guest, and we have a really good episode for you guys today. I'll be interviewing my really good friend, Adam Roach. Adam is a graduate assistant at Florida State with the men's basketball program there. Was also a student manager at the University of South Carolina with their men's basketball program, and he is a really good close friend of mine. We'll talk a little bit about how we met in the podcast. We'll also be discussing the NBA previews and predictions for this season. We'll be talking about which teams we think will be making the playoffs, some player predictions, and a bold prediction for the season as well. Without further ado, we will jump right into this episode with my good friend, Adam Roach.
All right, so we have Adam Roach on today. Adam is our first guest for the podcast. Adam, this is the second episode, the first real episode of the podcast. How's it feel to be on?
It was great. I feel privileged to be able to be a part of this journey, just starting it off, and hopefully it's going to end up blowing up, and looking forward to talking and catching up.
Yes, sir. So last time I saw you, you did not have a mustache. What's going on with that?
Okay, so we need to explain this and get it off the table before we dive into basketball things, but we have decided, me and a couple of other GAs, that we are going to keep a mustache until we lose. Right now, Florida State, we're 4-0, so this is the product of a couple-week mustache. So depending on how the team is doing and come January, hopefully we're still undefeated by the end of December. This is going to be a little bit thicker, hopefully, but I do have some ginger hiding in there.
Well, 4-0 to start the season, ranked 15th right now, off to a really good start. So hopefully you guys keep it up. Hopefully that mustache gets a little bit thicker. Hopefully you never have to shave it. That's the goal. That's the goal. But we'll just jump right in. Like he mentioned, he's a graduate assistant at Florida State. We're going to start off this interview basically talking about, how you got into basketball. So first question, how did you become involved in the game of basketball? When did you start playing? When did you first get introduced to the game?
Introduced was definitely just in the driveway. So I never played elementary school. I only started playing in 7th and 8th grade for the middle school team, but really was playing in the driveway with a couple of the boys that I grew up with, had a hoop. Never was taught basketball, more so it was just having fun outside, messing around, and then developed the passion for it kind of when I grew up watching Florida because my pops went to UF. And just seeing Billy Donovan coach those boys up really led to me understanding the game and paying attention to the game more.
Absolutely, for sure. And for people who don't know, I know this already. Adam is from Charlotte, North Carolina, so that's where he became introduced to the game. So it sounds like it was definitely something at first that was more casual for you. Like you said, you just play with your boys, stuff like that.
Yeah, most definitely. And then I would say by the time probably freshman or sophomore year, I definitely developed a passion of to where playing pickup more often, and playing JV freshman year led to me having more of an interest into it. But as far as playing career, it was never a real thing to consider. It was more so of just being with the guys and having fun with it and competing.
I definitely agree with that. I'm not the best player in my own right, as you know. We've had our battles in the past. But you mentioned Billy Donovan, as a coach that definitely, you identified at an early age, watched Florida, all that good stuff. Do you have any other role models or people who really sparked your interest in the game, or is it something that you kind of, found on your own?
Yeah, I would say some of it was on my own, but between Billy Donovan and then my high school coach and then another local high school coach, Jody Barbie and Dwayne Lewis, they both really kind of took me under their wing even when I wasn't playing basketball. Learned a lot from them on and off the court, and just seeing them coaching and the life that they had didn't necessarily make me want to be a high school coach, but it led me to understanding what it takes to be a coach, how you have to carry yourself, and just being a part of a good basketball culture like they both showed me what that takes. And so that led me to really considering being a manager going into college and also helping out with the team my senior year.
Absolutely. So like you mentioned, you played, freshman, you were a freshman on JV. Tell us a little bit more about your high school, career within basketball. Like you said, you played JV, what did you do with varsity? Just talk to us a little bit about that, what school you attended.
Yeah, so I went to Cox Mill High School. I got done with soccer season my freshman year, tried out for the basketball team, made the team. Really, a lot of that had to do with just the guys from the team, from middle school team, we all wanted to play with each other. And so I was your average role player coming off the bench. But then uh, after that season was when I really started focusing on college soccer. And so I wasn't able to be a part of any AAU team too seriously, or also the high school team my sophomore or junior year. But then uh, I would say summer going into senior year was when I really like said like, okay, I'm going to give up on pursuing college soccer. And I was like, I stayed in touch with Barbie, my high school coach, all throughout high school. And once I was able to like talk it out with him was once I was done with soccer my senior year, I'm gonna help coach, I'm gonna help be a manager, like whatever needs to get done, like I'll get it done. And that was going to propel me to being a manager in college. That was really what I did. And so that just was practices, traveling on the bus, games, water bottles, all that type of easy stuff. And so definitely, I would say the biggest thing was probably just being there each day, of being around the guys and helping rebound and helping with scouts and stuff like that. But that was all I really did during high school. So that was kind of just like the tip of the iceberg and just learning what I was going to need to do going into college.
I know a lot of people, have different experiences in high school with how they've, dealt with basketball. I know for me personally, I played and I didn't actually really play. I was on the team, but, I was more, my senior year trying to mentor younger guys who were playing in front of me. I know obviously a lot of people play and end up playing in college, and that's how they become, more passionate about the game. So it's definitely interesting to see your perspective there. And like you said, it kind of helped you out further down the line when you became a manager at South Carolina. Just real quick, last question about your time in high school. What would you say was your favorite thing about your time at Cox Mill and being around that program?
It would honestly probably be what happened after I left Cox Mill. So my senior year, we had a really good team and we ended up losing in quarterfinals of states. And so that hurt, and it was tough thinking like that was probably the last game I was going to be able to coach with them. But then, in fact, my freshman and sophomore year, I was both able to come back and help coach and help scout and go on a couple of trips to tournaments in the summer and also at winter break. And we ended up winning the state championship in both those years. And so, yes, I was somewhat a part of those teams, but it was more like satisfying to just see like those kids that were on the team when I was there and helping out, like see that their hard work and their success and all the other coaches that have been there the whole time, see their success really come to light and their hard work pay off. And really just, it was unreal to win those two games, both at one at Chapel Hill and one at NC State. And I'll never forget those games.
It's an incredible experience. And like you mentioned, that was your freshman and sophomore years. And so it definitely seems like you were invested in the program beyond your time as just a high school student, which was cool to see. And it really resonates with myself. When I graduated high school, my dad became the varsity coach at my high school. He was the JV coach previously. And that's what really sparked my interest. As I kind of talked about in the introduction episode, I was able to come back and coach summer league, and getting that extra experience definitely helps you out. So how did you then decide you were going to go to South Carolina, and then how did you become a manager?
Yeah, so South Carolina school-wise was kind of made up for me. I didn't get into a couple of schools, and then in a couple of other schools, I didn't get scholarship money, like out-of-state wise. For South Carolina, I was able to get some scholarship money. And so once I kind of had it in my head, like, okay, I'm going to go here in January of my senior year. And I still even remember the exact desk and the exact room and the teacher of the class I was sitting in when I emailed Andy, my future boss, for the first time, and was basically just like, yo, I'm a 18-year-old trying to get into the world of basketball. Like, what can I do? Can I be a manager this upcoming year? Like, volunteer, whatever I got to do. Like, I'm there. And so once, I mean, he got back with me pretty quick. And then in the summer, I had a couple phone calls with him. And that was really the whole interview process. I remember it was day one of moving into the dorm. Got a call, like, come meet everybody at my office. Met all the other managers that were returning, and they actually did hire a couple others that same day. And so we all just got to know each other from day one, and from the first day I was there to the last day of when everything hit the fan with Corona. I was there and working and just trying to learn as much as possible. And so it was not an extensive process of getting that job, but I think it more for like young people, like they gotta understand is they just gotta put their voice out there. They gotta put their name out there. And once you do that, like you'll be able to have opportunities to prove yourself. And that was kind of just how I took it and what I did with it.
So the process is definitely different from everyone, and definitely my own experience was different from yours. Did you start as a full-time manager? Talk a little bit about the difference between like a full-time manager and a volunteer manager, and was it a very intimidating process meeting all of the previous managers and new people when you first got to South Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, we were all full time. I mean, there was definitely some people that took more days off than others, or uh, once scholarship money was divvied up between everybody, like people got what they worked for, and I think everybody understood that. Intimidating, I wouldn't say that, just because I knew, like, okay, like these guys were in my shoes, whether it was a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and it was like they're going to understand where I'm at also, and just trying to learn from them was the biggest thing. um I think probably the first year, I don't know if intimidating is the word, but it was just kind of like being on your toes and not really knowing like how the culture is, and like learning about like how you're supposed to move, and like when's the right time to ask somebody a basketball question, when's the right time to have small talk with a coach or with a player and stuff like that. And so, I mean, learning that freshman year was definitely something that I went through and matured from. But I mean, yeah, just being there every day was what made that comfortable. Like, I feel like if I was taking days off, or just not, like you're saying, like being a part-time person or volunteer person that's not allowed to be there at all times, like that might have made the process a little bit longer. But just, I mean, if you're showing up every day, like you're going to end up talking to everybody and about random things to the most important things, and getting stuff done for people, whether it's at 6 a.m. or at 1 a.m. in the morning. That was kind of just what made me comfortable, and like just growing trust between ourselves was a huge part of why we were, one, able to be successful my freshman year and go to the Final Four, but then also just like these guys that are ending up in the NBA, and all these coaches that are coming out of South Carolina, and GAs, managers, whoever it may be. Like, that's why Frank runs his ship that way, is because he not only helps people on the court, but he's turning people into men off the court.
I know, like you mentioned, you were a full-time manager the whole time, and definitely kind of for you, it seems like it made things a little bit easier. I know that's not the case for everybody. My own shoes, I started out as a volunteer manager, and I think you definitely hit the nail on the head about trying to just manage, like, you know, when can you get that small talk time in with a coach, or when can you ask a basketball question. Personally, I was more shy. I know you're a pretty confident guy. I'm more reserved. I think if you're someone like myself, I kind of more took the approach like speak when spoken to. So when someone asked me to do something, I did it. And if someone spoke to me, I spoke to them. Otherwise, I was just there doing my job. I wasn't going to be boisterous, not going to do anything like that. So it's definitely interesting to get those two dynamics. And I think if you're someone who's interested in, becoming a manager in college basketball or doing anything, I think that it's really important, like you said, to just try to like get your voice in there. And whether you start out where you want to be, or you start out, like in my case, a volunteer where I wanted to become full-time, definitely just being able to prove yourself. So that kind of leads into my next question. How long did it take for you to get like really comfortable within the program? Was it a long transition? Was there a specific moment or specific things that helped you really get your foot in the door?
I would say, and for people that don't work in college basketball, camp season is a brutal season. Whether it's coaching kids at the younger camp or it's the 100 team that come for team camp, it's long hours. And I would say after that summer, I worked not only South Carolina's, but like 3 or 4 other different colleges. That was when it was like, okay, like one, I know how to work hard. Like your work ethic is going to speak for itself, but two, just being around those guys for that long of days and having traveled with them a couple of times that year, and really just seeing people, like we had a couple guys go to the league that year, and just having other guys come back in like new roles and just seeing them grow. It was like, well, it's not only them growing, it's like you're growing also. Like you're get better in yourself, you're going to be taking on more responsibility. And so once I understood, like, okay, like I got to take advantage of this. I got to realize that, okay, I got to get my school stuff done. I got to make sure my basketball stuff's done. I got to be performing in all aspects of life to make sure that I'm going to be able to be here, not just this year, but the years after. I'm not failing out of school and I'm not being a dumbass like at the gym. I would say like after that camp season, so going into probably August and getting back with the team, and we had 6 managers graduate that summer. And so my role from being the one freshman manager went from basically nothing and just like kind of what you said of you're going to do what you're told to do, to the expectation of you're finding extra stuff to do on top of what you're told to do real fast. And once I realized that, like, tried taking advantage of it. And I will say I did get burnt out a little bit that sophomore year because just I didn't have the correct understanding of like, okay, this is a long season. Like, don't kill yourself in the first 2 months. But then that was a good lesson to learn, because then my junior and senior year, I realized it was more about the length of the season, not trying to overflow or overload yourself like in the beginning of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're kind of leading me right into my next question. You talked about you adding on extra things on top of the roles and responsibilities you had going from your freshman year and into the additional years. So just talk to me a little bit about the roles and responsibilities you had for starting out like your first year, and what are some things that you increased upon, maybe learned how to do from other coaches? Just basically, what were some of the things that you learned, and what were some of the extra responsibilities you took on?
Yeah, freshman year specifically, I remember going to get like the hot box in the morning at 6 a.m. and driving in for the players to eat breakfast. And just, I mean, basically it was rebounding and being in the office, like showing face an hour a day or something like that, not really being in there. We're not working on anything. Showing up for practice, got to travel a couple of times. But then once sophomore year hit and everybody, all the other managers graduated, it I was going on every single trip. I was taking food orders. I was helping run workouts, whether it was at 6 a.m. or it was late night right before a game, like whatever it may be. Anything you could think of was getting done from that sophomore year to senior year. And so it was kind of just like I said previously, of understanding that responsibility and taking advantage of it and making sure like, okay, focus on this one job, because once you prove yourself on like that, then you're gonna get more responsibility. And so it was kind of just stacking that on top of each other and making sure you're there every day, like kind of freshman year, you weren't really expected to be there all the time. Like, you're not getting scholarship money. You're 18-year-old. They don't know if you're even going to be coming back for the next season. But once they get like, okay, you're going to be around, like, all right, it's time to give this kid some responsibility and like really prove himself to see if he's going to be successful as a manager, but also if he could stick in this world of college basketball.
Yeah, I think it's really important to know, like you mentioned, if you're interested in getting into college sports world as like a manager, anything along those lines, not being a player, it's definitely not glamorous. There's going to be so many tasks and responsibilities that you have to do. And like you mentioned, I think it's really important that you have to take it responsibility by responsibility. You can't get too far ahead of yourself. And the way you're really going to cement yourself is by doing it job by job by job and making sure you get each done correctly. And like you mentioned, you're going to have opportunities to increase on that. I know in my own experience, I started out my freshman year just a volunteer manager going to home games and home practices. But one thing that really got my foot in the door was helping RGA train our walk-on at the time. He had only played 1 year of organized basketball before coming to JMU, and they were really working on him, trying to make him better, have better competition and practice for our real players. And going in and working out with him at 8 a.m. every day during the week, Monday through Friday, really got my foot in the door and made me someone who they could trust and say, hey, if we need this, Jeff will do this for us. And I think that's what you mentioned in your own case. I think that's really important to note for everyone. Definitely take those responsibilities, but don't do too much. Take it job by job and make sure you do it well. So I think that was really good advice. What advice would you give for someone who's interested in going into the college athletics world as either a manager or something along those lines, just trying to get their foot in the door? Maybe someone who's currently in college or someone who's in high school or maybe even middle school who's, dreaming about that one day.
My biggest rule for myself is definitely listen more than you speak, because the coaches that are above you are there for a reason. They're making the money that they're making for a reason. They're getting the recruits that they're getting for a reason. They've been in the game as long as they have been for a reason. So it's good to go back and forth with them, have a conversation with them, bounce ideas off of them, but you need to be trying to learn as much from them as possible, because that's going to be somebody that can show you the ropes, regardless of if you're directly working with them or if you're just paying attention to them from a distance, taking notes on them. Like, that's my biggest thing, is like listening more than what you're talking, because you can't learn anything when you're talking. But then I would say the next things would just be really like understanding sacrifice. Like, there's going to be times where you can't do things. Like, you and me, we love playing video games, so we're going to find our time to play some video games, but sometimes you got to put the controller down and get the job done that needs to get done. But then other than that, I mean, I guess like the other thing would be saying yes to all jobs like given to you. Like, even if it's something that you don't know what to do or you haven't done it before, say yes and figure it out. Don't say no, because then they're not going to come back to you. There's going to be time. If somebody's giving you a job to do, unless it's some urgent job, there's going to be time for you to figure it out and still get it done. So like, assess the situation, call who you need to call, ask who you need to ask on what you got to do to get it done, but don't say no to a job just because you don't know what to do.
Yeah, I agree. I think definitely taking those extra responsibilities or jobs and, like you said, figuring it out. I know even the people who assign it to you will be willing to help you out as long as you ask questions. Don't accept something and try to figure it out on your own and do it wrong, because that would make it even worse. I think if you don't know how to do something, accepting it and saying, hey, like, I want to do this, can you help me out? I think that's really important, like you noted, and I think that's really good advice as well. So I just have two more questions about your time at South Carolina, just to get some insight on your experience there. The first is just telling us the most memorable moment from your time at South Carolina.
I would say, I mean, obviously the Final Four was big time. Like kind of I talked about already, I didn't have a whole lot of responsibility, so I didn't even fully grasp what all was going on during that time, but it was definitely the most enjoyable time I had there. I would say my senior year of not only beating Kentucky on the buzzer beater, finally beating Clemson, hadn't beat Clemson the entire time I was there, and then also going on the road and beating UVA at a sellout crowd like right before Christmas. Like that was those 3 wins just it helped me sleep at night. Those were great to be a part of, and uh, it it just for a manager you don't really ever see your work pay off. But if the team is successful in those big time games and like those rivalry games, like you forget about all the BS jobs that you did that day or the last week or the last month. Like all that matters is, these boys got out there, they won the game. Like I can go have a drink or just chill, and I know like okay, tomorrow everybody's gonna be in a great mood. And so I would say those 3 wins. And I mean, also like for me, like I had traveled before I got there as a manager, but really just like I felt like spending the time on the road with the other GAs, other managers, the players, like that was what really bonded all of us together. And definitely as I got more involved, like those road trips were real great times, and like I'll never forget that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it's important to know you're coming from South Carolina, so one of the top programs in the country. So those wins are, big time wins. Those games are nationally televised and definitely makes it even more sweet on top of, just winning the basketball game. And it's, like I said, nationally televised and, on the forefront of the basketball scene. So like you mentioned, those are big time. Everyone always feels positive about a win. And I definitely think, like you noted about those road trips, it's such a great opportunity to bond with people, not only just the fellow managers, like you said, the GAs as well, but also getting a good feel for the players and even the coaches. I know I bonded with some of the coaches on our past road trips. I know, Coach Rob Summers. We've played Xbox with him, but we would go on the road trip and he would set up the film projector in my room and we'd be playing Fortnite in my room. Just things like that are such cool experiences. And like you mentioned, like those coaches are there for a reason. They're really good minds within basketball, but then to have those experiences outside of basketball, just to share with people is definitely a plus. The next question I have is just tell us a little bit about how your season came to an end last year. I know with COVID, everything kind of went crazy. I know from in my own experience, we got to play our conference tournament and finish that up. And just tell me your side of the COVID pandemic. How did your season end, and how did you go from being in a pandemic at South Carolina to now being the graduate assistant at Florida State?
Yeah, so we were in Nashville SC tournament. We had unfortunately just lost to Vandy, and so that it hadn't burst our bubble, but it was close to bursting our bubble to try to get into the NCAA tournament. And then our senior leader had also got hurt right before we made the trip. And so going into that trip, it was tough. It was like, all right, we probably got to win 2 or 3 games in this tournament to make the NCAA tournament. And we were a couple of the coaches. I was actually with my mom, like up top, watching the Arkansas and Vanderbilt game and whatever, sitting on our phones, like checking Twitter. And all of a sudden, the Rudy Gobert positive test comes up. And so then I was like, oh, like this is serious. Whole NBA gets shut down that night. And then we wake up the next day and like all these tournaments are getting canceled. Our tournament gets canceled. And we're sitting in the hotel with all these drinks that we just bought, all this food that we just bought, like trying to figure out like, are we about to hop on the plane in 5 minutes, or are we waiting, or are we spending another night here? Like we had no idea. And so I think that was not only just from people that worked in college sports at that time, but just the whole country. Like nobody really understood like the significance of this virus and what it was about to lead to, and how uh, terrible the pandemic was going to end up. But we got on the plane that afternoon. In the middle of the plane ride, the NCAA tournament was canceled, landed, and me and my mom were actually supposed to go visit my sister who was studying abroad at the time. And when I got off the plane and I saw the NCAA tournament was canceled, I texted both of them and I said, I'm not going on that trip. And at the time, like still nobody understood like how serious
Yeah.
it was. And they were like, why do you not want to go on the trip? I said, they just canceled the NCAA tournament. ain't no telling what else is about to get canceled. And so that was kind of how that ended. And I was even thinking about it the other day, like that morning after we got back, I was taking some of the players to the airport, and it was kind of like joking, okay, see you in a couple weeks or might not see you again. And it was sure enough, is didn't ever see those boys again. And so that hurt because not only for me of like my last season at South Carolina, but just for some of those guys of like knowing like the work that they had put in and just not even being able to finish out the season. Wanted to see that for them, but I wrote on my Instagram post, I said something like the bitterness of the end of this season is just going to make the success of the future seasons better. And so I think just kind of trying to look at it with a positive outlook is the way to go about it. But then at that time, I was in contact with the Dobo here about trying to be a GA. Had emailed a couple times, had talked on the phone a couple times, but then once everything got shut down and there was no more season, no more tournament, and camps started getting canceled, that was when the interview process really picked up. There was a lot to do, like task wise. Like he had us making a couple photoshops. They had us making a highlight video, just trying to show us like what all we were capable of. Since nobody was really able to meet in person or to work camps to like see how somebody works or like see how they work with other people, that type of thing. So then I want to say it was May. We had uh, basically the last Zoom call to decide if we were gonna be a GA or not. And a couple hours later, gave me a phone call, and I mean, you know me, like I definitely put on like I'm this some big tough guy all the time, even though I know I'm not. But I I don't think I've cried happy like that and maybe ever in my life, even after all the state championships and everything, soccer games, basketball games, whatever the case may be. Like that was the most relief I think I've had ever, because it was just like with everything that was going on, I didn't know if I was going to I could be sitting at my mom's house on the couch watching TV, wishing that I was still a manager. But very thankful for Jared Lazarus. I'm thankful for everybody that's here at FSU and just everybody that was at South Carolina that helped me get here and taught me everything that I needed to know, and still trying to learn as much as possible. So really it's just about taking advantage of this opportunity and hopefully after these 2 years, just being able to get back into the coaching world, and it won't be so difficult without Corona going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you had mentioned, during the pandemic, basically no one knew what was going to happen. And like you mentioned, seeing people not knowing if it was going to be the last time you saw them at South Carolina, and then being able to not know whether or not you're going to be able to have a job or where you're going to be at within the next few months is definitely tough. And me and you were lucky enough to find opportunities. You at Florida State, me at UNC Wilmington doing a graduate assistantship. But a lot of people weren't offered those same opportunities, which is definitely unfortunate, and is why this pandemic has definitely been so disastrous, not only from people who have, been infected and gotten sick from it, but also, the economic and other impacts that it's had on people. So it's definitely been tough. I want to transition back because I know we haven't talked about how we met. So I know we met when you were at South Carolina, and we met working at Hoop Group. For people who don't know, Hoop Group is a basketball organization. They run tournaments, camps, pretty much you name it, they do it within the basketball world. Talk to me a little bit about how you personally got involved with it. Share your side of it. I'll talk about how I got into it, and then we can talk a little bit about how we met, what we learned there, and things like that. So just tell me a little bit about how you got started with Hoop Group.
Yeah, so it was actually first brought to my attention by the old AD at my high school, and I want to say it was going into it was some point in my senior year. I don't know if it was going into basketball season or when exactly it was, but he was just talking to me about like, like if you're trying to do this, if you're trying to do this basketball thing, like you got to get in Hoop Group. Like bunch of dudes go to it, guys that are managers, guys that are GAs, even some coaches go work it for a summer, that type of thing. And so then Chuck Martin, who was at South Carolina, assistant there, he also helped me get in there, put in a good word, same type of interview process, like over the phone, like you trying to work long days and not get paid for it, come along. And so that was the thing at the time of, all right, I've worked camps. Now let me get into something different, meet some new people. And so really, I want to say school ended in May, whenever that was, at the beginning of May. And I think I was home for a week, maybe 10 days. But then once that happened, we were all heading up to New Jersey, got up there and were with each other until August, whatever the case may be. But yeah, no, that was just, it was it's funny to look back on, thinking about getting up in the Belmar hotel and sitting there just talking, and just the definitely one of the biggest memories from that hotel is when we were all drinking one night and J.R. Smith blew the NBA Finals game. Like, we can never forget that. But yeah, no, I mean, that entire summer, I mean, there's still a couple of the guys, obviously you and me still talk a lot, but that I still keep in touch with. And it really, for me, it's just going to be cool, even if we're not talking to each other as much, of one day, hopefully we coaching against each other, whatever, coaching near each other, and we're able to set up a scrimmage or something like that, just aware of like, these dudes, we were all 18, 19, 20, 21 years old trying to find our way, and hopefully all end up being successful coaches and linking back up in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you mentioned you were home for pretty much a week after um, your semester at South Carolina. It was pretty much the same for me. I heard about hoop groups through our head manager at the time at JMU. He had worked there the previous summer with Adam Beam, who we both know really well. He was the head runner at the time we were there. He's now at Alfred State. So shout out Beam if you're listening. But yeah, so he had worked with him, and he told me it was a great resource if, interested in working basketball in the future. I think basically what Hoop Group taught me was how to work hard for little reward. Like you mentioned, it was a bunch of 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids out there. And I remember my first day, I got there and I walked in and there was 10, 15 other kids my age sitting on the phone, just calling up people, random people out of the blue that they have in their system, trying to get them to come out to camps and things of that nature. And I was definitely intimidated at first. I was like, geez, like, what did I get myself into? But luckily I had that, connection with Beam at the time. And I was able to transition into being a runner, which was like working basically the front lines of camp, filling up Gatorade bottles, running courts and different things like that. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, I think that's definitely taught me how to work hard. I remember, I was probably there for 2 or 3 nights. I had my own room at the time, so that was nice. And then you came, and we linked up, and I still remember that first night. You came back to the hotel, and we were just talking about pretty much anything. I know the first thing that you noticed was I had an Xbox in my room. So you immediately like, oh, you play Xbox? What games you play? And we started talking. Fortnite was obviously the big game at the time. So instant connection through that. But I think just basically, like you mentioned, getting to meet people our age and getting to build that connection with them, and it's not even that at that time it was special. It's going to be special 10, 15 years from now. It's even special now, seeing everyone where they're going, where they're ending up. It's really cool. And to kind of still have that bond, I know we still have a few group chats and stuff like that where people post and send pictures in at random times and things like that. So definitely just having that connection with people. It's a lifelong bond that I think that everyone who was pretty much there feels for one another. So it was really cool, and it was a really special experience. So I kind of mentioned that I think it really taught me how to work hard. I just want to get your takeaways on what you pretty much learned that summer at Hoop Group, and what were your main responsibilities during that time?
I would say probably just like, I mean, being a manager teaches you like how to show up every day, but for that specific summer, like you're doing the same thing every day. And
I
so
think it's like being a manager on steroids, like for like
yeah,
a summer.
right. And so it was like, okay, 5 days into it, you're starting to get comfortable on the phone of calling people, but then 5 weeks into it, you're like, I gotta call another person. I gotta call 250 people in one day. Like, I think it really is just like kind of a test of how bad you want to get into the industry, and it definitely will have taught me like how to be patient and to stick to something. I would say there was definitely some days that I was probably wavering a little bit, and some of me, I feel like you got the better side of it of being a runner, other than when you would come back to the room and your feet were reeking
Yeah,
up the entire hallway. But um, yeah, nah, to me, I personally like more of getting stuff done and like just being on the fly and running around and that type of thing. And so sitting in the office was tough to do, but it did teach me, like I said, patience and just being persistent with something and showing up every single day, getting phone calls, trying to get kids into camp. And so that was probably the biggest thing that I learned. And I mean, I guess working with strangers, because it's like when you get hired onto a new staff, you're not going to know anybody. You're not going to really have worked it with anybody in the past majority of the time. So you got to learn their personalities and do your best to get along with them. And I would say over the course of the summer, some of us definitely butted heads, and there were some long days and a lot of shit talking, but there was good times with it. And I think it's a real good experience for anybody that is trying to be in college basketball, and it'll teach you a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And like you mentioned, you were an office intern. So for people who want to know a little bit more information, office interns, like Roach mentioned, kind of just do office tasks, make phone calls, other things of that nature. Can be different things each day, updating the system, putting different stuff in it. I know
Sitting
once
at
camp
the desk.
started, you had a lot more responsibilities, like organizing like the draft and like things like that, working with that type of stuff. I started off as an office intern pre-camp, and then once we went out to Albright College, I switched over to being a runner. And I know the guys who were working in the office tried to get me to stay in the office, and I was like, hell no, I cannot make one more phone call. So like you said, like definitely something that burns you out. And you mentioned you like running around and doing different things. That's more of my speed as well. It's a lot that, like you said, my feet would sink up the entire hallway. I had the Nike like health app on my phone, and I walked 20 miles in one day, just bouncing around place to place. Like you never have a time to like just think and, collect yourself, but it teaches you resiliency. It teaches you, like you said, just to stick it out and be tough. And like you said, it kind of makes or breaks you. And I think a lot of people go there with a preconceived notion of, I want to be in basketball. And then having that experience, it either is like, yes, I want to do this. And that process pays off for you. And you're like, I still want to do this. I love it. Or it's kind of like, it might not be for me. I think it either goes one of those ways. And I know for me and for you, definitely kept our interest and is something that we really wanted to do. Another question, I know I have a few, but what were some of your most memorable moments from when we were out at Hoop Group? I know you mentioned one was when J.R. Smith blew the game, but do you have any others that you can think of? I have a few to share, but if you don't have any, I'll share mine.
Off the top of my head, definitely the time where Zach and Austin, they were our bosses that entire summer. Who'd they beat? Hancock and who was it?
Was it
Bernstein?
at was tennis or was it
Yeah,
or
it was tennis. It
GameCube?
was tennis.
Was it Ethan?
I think it was Bernstein. Yeah, I think it was Ethan, and I just vividly remember Hancock walking off and Zach and Austin still talking to him. I would say that. I mean, the one night we were over there drinking, playing baseball, and we got all hyped up, and I think I can't remember who all was on the team. I want to say it was you, me, Beam, and somebody. Might have been Bo, and we spanked whoever we were playing, and we were hyped and probably were waking up the neighbors with the music and everything. Um, and then definitely was when I kicked the field goal to shove it in Austin's face. And for everybody that doesn't know, and Austin, if you're watching this, you still owe me a lot of food. But supposedly there was some intern that worked that summer or worked the previous summer, and he was talking shit and said that he could kick a 35-yard field goal. I can't remember the exact story. Anyways, that kid was not able to kick the field goal. I said, I can kick that and then some. And so then we got back, and so we were in the office from probably 10 a.m. to noon or 1. Everybody was just sitting there everybody was betting on if I was going to be able to kick a 50-yard field goal or not. And Austin made the bet with me, like, I'll buy you lunch and dinner for a whole week if you make it. And so then we went out there right at our lunch break, and I hadn't kicked a football in years. Like, I mean, playing soccer, like, it kind of like stays with you, but kicking a football is a little bit different. And I remember the first 5 were like
way short.
Yeah, like they were online, but my leg was
landed at
not.
the goal line.
Yeah, like leg was not warmed up. I was tight, like whatever. And then you can hear it in the video that everybody was recording, but Austin chirped a little bit and he was like, Roach, is that all you got? And sure enough, on that 6-1, I booted it through. So that was definitely it was a good time. And I will reiterate one more time, Austin, if you're watching this, you owe me food.
So I'm actually gonna throw the video in here in the final copy.
There we go.
Because that was the most epic. That was like the most epic moment that whole summer. Like you said, the whole day everybody was talking crap. No way you can kick it. There's people were like, yeah, he's got it. Yeah, he's got it. I was like teetering both times. I was like, there's no way, but maybe. I was kind of like on the fence a little bit, and I was on the goal line. I know like most of the people were up at the 50-yard line, like with you. And then there was like a few of us down at the goal line, and the first few were short, and I was like, oh, no way, he's got this. And I could hear Zach and Austin chirping like from the 50. And then you had a couple that had the distance but were wide. And then you finally had that one that was perfect. And I remember as soon as he kicked it, we were on the goal. We were right underneath the thing, like looking up, like, he's got it. And it went through, and everyone went wild. That was definitely like the most epic. And I'm going to throw the video in here.
All day. Come on now. Look at us down, are we, Roach? That's gotta be it.
I remember the World Cup being that summer, so they were trying to bet the games, and you were like, I know soccer, and people throughout the office were trying to like tell them to take bets, and they were losing, and I remember it was Spain versus Portugal, and me and you were like, you got to bet a draw. It's going to be a draw. It's going to be a draw. And Spain was up 3-2 in like the 85th minute, and Ronaldo bangs a free kick, and me and you were like, went wild. We were like, we told you. And they didn't do it. But that was another one. And like you said, just people playing tennis against each other, talking shit. I know people were playing GameCube, Mario Super Strikers and Mario Super Sluggers, and it was just fun. Just like the banter back and forth between everyone was definitely like the funnest thing in my book. So that was just basically a little bit about our time at Hoop Group, and now we'll jump back into you at Florida State. So you talked about your process of you getting to Florida State. Just tell us a little bit about the roles and responsibilities you have now as a GA at Florida State.
Yeah, I mean, so right now, I mean, we've only played 4 games, and so I would say the biggest thing since the season has like really started and us playing games is we grade like on our defensive film, like pretty in depth of just seeing like how guys played as individuals defensively. And so usually that means 2-3 hours after the game, you're still watching the game over, grading the guys, and then you're able to get out of there. But then other than that, a lot of the jobs here are the same as what I did as a senior manager, truthfully. Getting food orders, going to pick up food, watching film, helping out in practice, whether that's passing or coming off a screen or whatever the case may be. Definitely getting in the gym for workouts. I would say I've been more involved here. Not as early because here, like with COVID going on, we have slots of when we're supposed to be in the gym. And so at South Carolina, it was more so of like it could be at 6 a.m., it could be at midnight, but so far it's been basically in the middle of the day of just when we're supposed to be in the gym, rebounding and helping guys get better, getting shots up. It was pretty funny today. We were in the gym and one of our guys he was like, all right, I'm gonna shoot 100 free throws. And so I was like, all right, yep, I got you. Get out of there, whatever. My man, I'll give him a shout out. Anthony Polite, been big time these first couple games. Made 85 in a row to start off. Starts off 85 for 85, trying to get to 100. We made eye contact for the slightest of seconds. And he busts out laughing. And I should have said, like, whoa, 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 like, hold up, don't shoot, don't shoot. But he wanted to shoot. And so he's laughing. He kind of like collects himself, takes a deep breath, and throws it up and misses the 86. I was just like sitting there. I was just like, I know we did not just sit here trying to get better. And I mean, he still shot great. He shot 100 out of 103. So, like, I'll take it. But it's like what we've talked about of just bonding with the players and being in the gym and bonding with the coaches, going over scouts, that type of thing. Those are just the moments and the times that you really appreciate as a manager when you aren't neck deep in jobs or in work that you got to do. And so, yeah, I mean, really as a manager, as a GA, it's been a lot of the same stuff. And so just still learning as much as I can basketball wise here and just trying to take note on how this staff works and how this culture works. And yeah, that's about it.
I think the similarity in the tasks and responsibilities definitely seems helpful for you, and I'm sure it is for many others as well. 2 more questions about where you're at now. What has your time at Florida State taught you? I know it's only been a few months, but what has your time at Florida State taught you, and what has your time at South Carolina like taught you the most personally, and about the game of basketball?
Basketball, everything, because I mean, you've played more than I have. You have a good basketball knowledge. Like, I still don't even have that great of basketball knowledge. Like, I've grown up playing soccer, like that my IQ of basketball is not high. And so from Frank and his defensive principles and some of the principles here are very similar of being in line and denying and just trying to make life hell for point guards and for guys on the wing, to where you don't even allow their post players to get going and you don't even allow guards to breathe and everybody's helping out and closing down gaps, that type of thing. I would say workouts, like listening. I was also in the gym this summer with my guy Deshaun Davis. He's with the Hornets, and like seeing how he works and seeing how pros work, and just staying in the gym with all different types of guards, centers, bigs. Like, everybody has their own skill set. Just learning like what a player needs to get better at. That type of thing has been real beneficial. South Carolina, I would definitely say just listening. That was the biggest thing I learned from South Carolina, because that was when I was a young kid just trying to get into the game of, like you said, sometimes it is like spoke when you're spoken to, and sometimes it's you're able to talk shit or whatever, like after practice or even sometimes during practice, depending on who it's with. And really just that culture there of showing up each day and like showing that tough love is important, because I think a lot of, not necessarily coaches, but this like just our society sometimes like lets things slip by, and there was nothing that was going to slip by there. Like, you're held to a certain standard. Like, you better show up each day. Like, you better come with some attitude, come with an enthusiasm and like a will to win. Even if you are struggling at the time, like, you still got to be fighting, that type of thing. But then for here at Florida State, I mean, the culture is definitely different. I would say talent wise would be the only like difference that I like have seen like that's real significant. Like obviously they just had two guys selected fourth and 11th overall. And so here some of the players have been able, or I've been able to like see how they act as a 18, 19, 20-year old, like knowing like, okay, like I got to do this, this, and this. I got to get better at this, this, and this to be able to get drafted. And so just seeing like how those players get better and see how these coaches like push them to get better and uh, just while also turning into men off the court, they're really developing their game on the court. And for me, of just being able to watch that growth has been awesome to see in just the 4 months that I've been here.
Yeah, I mean, so you mentioned the players getting better and learning, what they need to do to become successful. I think being a manager also teaches you that. I know like Jay Billis and other like basketball insiders always like college basketball managers, hardest working people in the business, like
Yeah.
things like that. Like just I think pretty much what you see with those players is true regarding managers. I know you mentioned like listening and just learning a lot of different things about basketball and yourself is important. I know like the one thing I think I really took away from my time at JMU is like confidence in yourself and your voice and like trying to basically like show that you have it. Previously, like I mentioned, I was kind of shy, like reserved, and now I'm definitely a little bit more confident in my opinions and in my voice. And it's one of the reasons why I decided to do this. I was actually like pondering of whether or not about starting this for a while, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do it. I'm confident in it and confident in it myself. And I definitely think that being a manager and having those responsibilities and all the tasks you go through and all the stuff you have to deal with will teach you how to be successful. And I know there's a lot of organizations for managers and a lot of people like hiring, people who work in college athletics and who are managers because they know what it takes to get the job done. So I definitely think that's really important to note.
Yeah.
Finally, the last thing I want to ask you is just basically what is your dream basketball scenario? Where do you see yourself, or what's the perfect situation for yourself right now, say 10, 15 years? Like, what's your dream? Is it, coaching the NBA, coaching college, coaching high school? Like, what is it, right now for you?
I would say goal number one would definitely be everybody wants to be a head coach. There's only so many head coaches, but really just trying to, in 10, 15 years, be the best assistant coach that I possibly could be. Like if I'm lucky enough and find myself in the role of being an assistant of really detailed scouts, like helping a dude not only on the court but off the court, of giving him as much knowledge as I possibly can. Like that means being a father figure, if that's just somebody that he's coming to when he needs, like whatever the case may be, of just trying to be that right balance of coach and mentor for a 18, 19-year-old that might be confused on life or going through something, and really trying to get a grasp on what he needs to be doing in the basketball wise, like on the court. I would say like maybe if the right job overseas opened up, or like if I had the opportunity to be an NBA scout, like I would do it. But I just feel like there's not enough difference that I could be making doing that job. Like yes, I'm getting into college basketball because I have a passion for basketball, but I feel like even more so it's just about like making a difference on kids' lives. Like there's such an opportunity to be able to like just providing a scholarship for somebody, but turning them into, doesn't matter what star they are or how highly they were recruited or whatever the case may be, like just turning them into a man, but then a better player in the 2, 3, 4 years that you are around him. Like that's something you're going to be able to think about, and he's going to be able to think about and look back on for the rest of his life. And so that's that would be the main goal, of just being the best assistant possible and just trying to take advantage of that opportunity and don't waste it, because you really can make a difference in this world.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful, especially with college basketball, especially being a really cutthroat business where people are trying to get ahead and obviously try to be as successful as possible. Taking that time to really make an impact on your players is something that I think needs to be focused on more. And to hear that, is a focus for you is really encouraging. And I definitely think, a lot of people our age, can have identified with that. And we've seen so many instances over the course of our lives of, programs who aren't doing things the right way. And, there's even been, we've seen, cases of abuse at programs and things of those nature. And I definitely think, learning and growing with the game of basketball as these things are kind of happening and really trying to make an impact on people is important. So that's awesome to hear.
So that is going to conclude part 1 of this podcast with my good friend Adam Roach. Thank you all for tuning into part 1. Hope you all enjoyed the interview. Make sure you're on the lookout for part 2 of the interview, where we'll be discussing the NBA season, and we are going to be going over some previews and predictions. Thank you guys for all tuning in, and I hope to see you all in the next one.
Hit that subscribe and like button right now.